So a couple days back, I actually did a reaction video to an older set 1 guide, and as somebody who started playing in set 6, I had no idea how different the game truly was back then. I've seen clips here and there, but I really don't know too much, so it's really interesting not only just watching it and just reacting to it for the first time, but also having you guys in the comments teach me things that I had no idea about TFT. So it's such a refreshing experience. I've never really had this kind of thing happen before, so it's cool to see that TFT's been here for so long and we can do this kind of thing. Real quick before we start though, just a little bit of housekeeping. Sign-ups for Project Mentor, which if you don't know what it is, it's a project that I am hosting amongst with top other Challenger players. But the sign-ups for this is closing today, July 26th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. If you don't know what it is, basically a personal trainer program for hitting your super high rank goals. This is for the very, very dedicated players. It is a bit of an expensive program. I do understand that. So it definitely is not for everybody, but if that's something you're interested in, I'll leave the link below in the description. That alongside with one more thing, Project PvE Major. This is the first Project PvE tournament that is happening. That again, I'm hosting this as well. I believe Sub-Zero Arc will be there and a couple others to help me co-host. But this is a tournament that's happening on stream July 27th. So this Saturday from 9 a.m. Eastern is a 2-day event. 24 players play day 1, 16 get eliminated, and then day 2, it is a checkmate lobby format. So if you have no idea what the hell is going on during set 12 and you want to see some of the best players in the world compete against each other to try and win out this tourney, the first ever major, come swing by. Again, it's twitch.tv/watanabe_sky. Whoa, I butchered the hell out of that. Twitch.tv/watanabe_kai. 9 a.m. Eastern, both days. We'll see you there. But anyways, let's go on to today's video. Okay, so here we go. Transitioning pivoting guide, teamfight tactics from none other than Scarra the Don. Fucking July 19, 2019. That is an old ass video. I've actually never seen this video. I've seen the thumbnail for this video and I actually have tried drawing inspiration from it before, like really early on in my TFT career, but I've never actually watched the video. So really excited to see. Oh, did I like the video yet? No, I did not. Gotta make sure I do that. And let's just get started. Scar's the boy, dude. Scar's such a sick person.
Today's guide will be the most
really
requested guide that I read.
At least from my very minute interactions from
about
talking to him
pivoting.
online.
So what is pivoting?
He seems
and what
like a
is
really cool
transitioning in teamfight tactics? Essentially, what it is in layman's terms is you want to go a certain comp you have in mind, and you can't do it. So
sorry, I thought he kind of paused a little too long in between the sentences. I thought it was so funny. What is pivoting? It's when you want to go a comp, and then you can't. But right, I thought it was pretty
how
funny.
do you
it's
get
fine.
out
it's
of
just
this comp and go to
also I'm kind of
comp
super brained. I feel like I gotta like put
dying?
everything on like 3x
We're gonna
speed.
focus this guide mainly on the aspect of pivoting or transitioning late game. This is because usually what happens,
you don't really pivot in the early game very often. It's definitely like when you're pivoting in your mind, you're pivoting around forecast typically, but you are already taking action during like earlier parts of the game, like stage 2, stage 3. If you're gonna pivot, you decide pretty quickly if you're gonna pivot or not. If you're pivoting at like stage 4, it's like usually too late, unless you hit some like egregious high roll of some type, and then you're gonna pivot. But that's usually the only time it ever really makes sense.
In the early mid game is this. Early game, you just throw power onto the board. You throw whatever 2-star units you can find and combine, and try to make the best kind of small synergy comp you can with it.
Yeah.
Synergies don't really
That's
start
still true now.
in until kind of the late game, especially when you start to want to talk about pivoting and transitioning into other situations. Most of the times, a lot of comps are built around 4-cost and 5-cost units in the game. It sounds crazy, but
I mean, you saw reroll,
when you learn to pivot and you learn to transition at the very beginning, you learn to transition and pivot around these 4 and 5-cost units. So how do we get 4-cost units and how do we get 5-cost units in the game? Let's quickly look back toward the percent.
Oh, interesting. So look at the text on the screen. It says you have to learn to look out for which 4 or 5 units you get early and strategize around them. That's not true today. Nowadays, you decide your 4 or 5 costs based off the damage type that you're leaning, whether that be AD or EP, and then if those items that you're getting dropped within those certain damage types or damage archetypes, if they're good for a specific carry or good for a specific carry. Sorry. So like, for example, right? Let's say you get like a sword tier rod opener. That looks like a Shojin plus rod, right? You're probably going to slam Shojin and play around some level of AP, but that means that now you're trying to lean more towards, like a high mana cost AP carry rather than somebody who would prefer a blue buff, right? Because optimally speaking, you want to be able to play a line where your units fit into the items so that your unit that you are trying to end with has BIS because it's easier to control the units that you find, but you can't always control the items that you get. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Percentage probability of you getting a 4 or 5 cost at early levels. So at level 5, you have
look, these are the old unit odds. Wait. Let's go look at these. So we have, let's see, we have 100% for tier 1. I mean, that makes sense for level 2, tier 3, tier 4. Oh, dude, look at tier 5. 3% for tier 4. So that's actually gone down. So it's 2% now. And tier 3 is different as well. Tier 3 used to be 25%. 25% for tier 3, and nowadays we're at 20%, I believe. What else is there? There's also 0.5% level 6. Look at that. They used to use decimal points. That's crazy. This seems like a sin. Like, we would never use decimal points nowadays. So it's really weird to see decimal points in the unit odds. That's so weird. Also, level 7 2%. It's coming down to 1%. 5% is now 3%. Level 10, is it? It's higher now. Is it 25% now? It's like 20 to 25% now, tier 5. So on level 9. So that's different. Also, we have level 10 now, which is a very obvious thing. But wow, this is so interesting to see. Also, level 8 odds, 20% for level 8. It's 18% now, I think. It's 18. It's 17. They keep changing it, man. But I think it's 18% now. And then level 7, I'm pretty sure it's lower than that. I'm pretty sure it's like 10%. I think it's 10%. Yeah, it's 10%. Rather than 15% listed here. Also look at these odds, even for like the lower end as well. Like 37% for tier 1's level 5. I think it's much higher now. I think it's 42% on tier 1s here. I think I could be wrong. I think it's like 42%. Maybe 45. I feel like more would choose a round number, so it's probably 45 or maybe 40. No, it's probably 45. It's probably 45. Yeah, 45. I'm gonna lock in 45. This is taking too long. Regardless, it's cool to see the differences though. That's really interesting to see. And we've come a long way. Nowadays, it feels pretty good. I would say. I would like them to stop changing it, but that's just my personal opinion.
a 3% chance of getting a 4 cost unit and a 0% chance of getting a 5 cost unit. At level 6, you have a 10% chance of getting a 4 cost unit and a 0.5% chance of getting a 5 cost unit.
0.5.
And at level 7, you have a 15% chance of getting a 4 cost unit, and I think a 2% chance of getting a 5 cost unit.
See,
These
even
are
he
the
didn't
big
know.
levels for you to learn.
Nobody
how
knows
to transition
exactly.
and to look toward transitions or pivots with your comp. So a good example of a situation where you're going to need to pivot is, let's say you're an assassin player,
Sure.
and you found a perfect assassin opener. You have Kha'Zix to Pike and Zed, and all of a sudden you no longer see assassins. None of the assassins start coming up anymore, but you find a brand. And all of a sudden, brand allows you to go Elementalist. That's the big giveaway, because Elementalists require
what?
3 Elementalist brand. Before brand, you're only able to get Kennen as well as Lysandra. But once you get brand, you can always go backwards to find the other 2 a lot easier. The chances of you getting the other 2 are between 20 to 30% on a roll, at least for their tier. And the chances of you getting the 4 costs are pretty slim. So usually what happens when you look toward pivots is you find the important unit first and work backwards for any of the synergies that you need afterwards.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie, he was losing me in the middle and then he got me in the end. So basically he's saying, like, if you find that 4 cost or any 4 cost that's good, you want to start working backwards, as in trying to find the lower cost units that fit into the comp. Okay, that makes sense. That logic is very interesting because we definitely don't have that today. Not even a little bit at all, to be completely honest. Like, if you see like a 4 cost, I remember there's this one game early in set 11. I saw a really early 4 cost Lilia on level 5, and I had 80 items. And I remember buying it and thinking, I'm a moron. Why did I buy this? I feel like if you used his logic in this video in set 11 when I was playing, you would have been like, oh, I found a Lilia. I gotta like work backwards and start figuring out my comp from there. But no, that was just a waste of econ, and I actually like completely threw the game. It made no sense. So yeah. Really interesting that the logic is
you find
not
the
the same
brand,
anymore.
and then you start building the ninja comp with brand and elementalist, and then all of a sudden you pivoted from going 6 assassins, what your original idea was, to going Kali Zed, 3 assassin, 3 elementalist, 4 ninja combination. And that's something that only happened because you had the initial pieces to go 6 assassins and some of the ninja pieces, and then you found brand, which allowed you to go elementalist.
Okay, but I would assume brand is AP though, right? And wasn't it items AD? So I feel like it would really not fly in today's standards.
Example of this would be let's say that you
Obviously,
are
this video
looking
is 5 years
to
old, so-
find a 6 sorcerer comp, but how do you get 6 sorcerers? Like, is it humanly possible to get 6 sorcerers without Karthus or Aurelion Sol? The answer is no, until TF comes out, which then the answer is you can, but until that unit comes out,
I don't get it. I don't get the reference at all.
Player,
Sure,
which means you
I believe
need
you,
the
man.
4-cost sorcerer or the 5-cost sorcerer to even consider going this comp. So before
Okay.
you can pivot towards sorcerers, towards 6, you just need 3, and then you can consider 6 once you find one or the other.
Interesting. So it seems it's very like you play towards what you find, which is good. But I would say that nowadays, because we're so good at scouting and identifying other players as lines in the lobby, you can identify that because this person's probably going to take out X 4 cost and this person's going to take out Y 4 costs. Then if I go this line, which utilizes Z 4 costs, then I'm going to find my units. And that's sort of how the logic has evolved, at least from what I can understand from this video.
The importance of 4-star units cannot be understated. You have units like
Yeah,
Draven
they are important.
can hard carry your comp strictly through damage by itself. A lot of comps pivot and transition around Draven. So gunslingers are a good example of a comp where it's like, let's say you're not really going anywhere with gunslingers. A lot of the items like rapid fire cannon or like BT potentially on your gunslingers can function very well on your Draven, and Draven is just a super hard hitting attack damage carry.
That's actually so funny. I wonder if players liked that back then. I feel like nowadays it's like if there's that one unit that is so good and it could like carry a whole comp, like I can already hear Soju like bitching about it. Like he's like, oh, like this guy just fucking hit Draven. He rolled down, he hit one Draven, GG's. And then the game's over. And then he's like pissed off about it. I feel like this is very unhealthy for TFT. So, if this is how it was back then, I'm glad that we shifted away from that. Because nowadays, you really do need the upgraded version of that unit for it to really do its job and do its due diligence. So, yeah, glad to see that we're not there
So once
anymore.
you find the Draven,
That shit
you can
sucks.
transition into more of a Draven-oriented Imperial comp. But you can only transition that way when you find the 4-cost Draven, because he's the linchpin
It's a
of the
lot of
composition.
emphasis on 4
So
costs.
4-cost
Interesting.
units are extremely valuable and extremely important in being able to fill out and flesh out your final composition. Another example of a composition that is very difficult to do without 4 stars is 4 Rangers. So
4 stars
you
or 4
need
costs?
Kindred as the 4th Ranger to function with the 4
I assume it
Ranger
means 4
passive.
costs.
And let's say you just don't find Kindred. It's not something that happens. So what can you do as a player to kind of counteract the inability for you to find a core 4-star for your composition? Well, you have to look at the built-in synergies for the rest of your kit. Usually what happens if you can't find the Kindred...
Interesting. So that's interesting. So he's saying like if you can't find the unit that you need, you are just filling in the void, right? And that's true. That's true for like early and mid game. But nowadays in the late game, it's more. I'm not gonna say like you have to have like these specific 8 units no matter what, but you have less liberty to play around. Actually, you know what? I take it back. That's not true. You can get pretty creative with your like stage 4 boards. But typically when it gets to stage 5, that's really when you need to find like the core units of the composition before you can really push to 9. For like 80%, 70% of scenarios, it depends. Like if it's an S tier line and you can like sort of like budget your way through and maybe the tempo is low, I can see some exceptions to this rule. There's no like, you know, it has to be XYZ sort of situation here, but it's definitely less commonplace, especially late game now.
You're looking at Ashe as well as Varus, which are 2 kind of
Vayne 3
better,
with Titanic
more
Hydra.
higher cost rangers, and trying to build stuff from them.
I wonder what that
Whether
item
it's
does.
Glacial or Demon, that's a very common kind of transitional
Demon?
route as you're waiting to find
Demon's
a
a cool comp
Kindred.
name.
So maybe you want to run
Demon Vayne? That sounds
Sedge,
cool.
or you want to run. Well, a standard comp with Rangers has Sedge Ashe, but let's say you want to run Volibear plus Braum to kind of wait and kind of wait for your Kindred. Because a lot of times the biggest problem for players in this game is the fact that like they're tunneled in on a very, very specific composition, but in reality the best part and the best trait you can have as a player is the flexibility to be able to run what the game gives you. So Rangers can do anything from going, you know, Ranger Knight frontline to maybe you never find the Knights, never find what you're looking for Knight wise. You don't find the Mordekaiser ever. You don't have much Sejuani.
Yeah.
Even if you might.
It sounds like
want to
basically just
find
don't
it, but
hard
you
force.
find brand. All of a sudden, you're able to get an Elementalist Glacial
Which kind of
pivot
makes sense.
with brand, Lysandra, and to some extent Anivia as key pieces of your Ranger composition.
Yeah, so he's not wrong, right? Like, you shouldn't hard force a composition. The game's not giving you a unit. You're not getting that unit, right? You can't play Callista without hitting the Callista, right? But like I said before earlier, because you should be good enough nowadays at the top level to identify everybody else's lines, you should know that statistically speaking, you're very likely to find the unit that you're looking for because you are uncontested for your line. Because again, you scouted and you did your due diligence, because that's now a very important part of the game at the highest level.
Elementalist is the example I use a lot, mainly because Elementalist is the easiest pivot to understand because it all kind of flexes on one specific unit, and it's a very tiny synergy that only costs 3 units that you can easily go back for. Another thing
that kind of reminds me of Freljord in set. It was the Piltover set. What Zon set? What set was that? Was that set 10? No, set 9. Zon, Zeri. I don't know why I can remember these. I can't remember the set. Zon, Zeri, Freljord. You get the idea. Whatever set that was. It reminds me of that. It was like a 3-piece. And you could put like whatever fucking... Was it set 8? No, it wasn't set 8. Maybe it was set 9. Was it set 9? I forget. The point is, that was like a 3-piece that you could lock in, and then just kind of flex around. Even then, though, like back then, I don't remember like just flexing Freljord and playing Freljord flex. I think that was like a thing for like a couple weeks, and then it like slowly became like just Freljord plus whoever the backline carry was. It was probably Ash, or if there was Freljord Zeri with Gunners, and that was like the main meta comp, and Freljord was never really utilized outside of that as like a flex trait. I think that sort of idea is sort of dead now. You can't really do stuff like that anymore. I wonder what TFT would look like if you only had like every trait was only up to like a 3-point breakpoint. Like, then what? I don't know.
I didn't mention is that the
like
4 cost units and 5 cost units in this game are very limited in quantity. There are
Wait a
only
minute.
13 4 cost units in the game.
Oh, these are the unit bags. The bag size changes ever since 13 tier 4s. There's only 11 now, I think. No, there's only 10 now. Wow, it's a lot less now. There's only 10 now. There's only 9 5 costs. Yeah, so it goes 9, 10. And there's only 17 3 costs, I think. They're significantly less now. Holy shit. I don't remember the 2 cost, 1 cost off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure it's lower than this. Wow, 13 is a lot. Did we have 13 for a while? I don't think I knew what bag size was until like set 7. Maybe set 8. Probably set 7. But
And 10 5 cost units, which means, let's say you get the early brand. There's only 12 left, which means it's less likely for your opponents to get them. And even if they do get them, once they find out they can't get a 2-star as easily as someone who already has multiple copies, then they will be more likely to give up on the brand than you. So finding the early 4 cost units is super, super important, and understanding how the quantity of the units and the scarcity of the units helps a lot in being able to understand their relative value in this game. We kind of talked about damage oriented pivots with brand.
It's actually more true now since the back sizes have decreased since 5 years ago.
As well as Draven. But let's talk about the CC frontline. I said all the best frontline units in the game are CC tank or tanks. So it's Cho'Gath, Gnar, and Sejuani. Some of the times you're not going to be able to get the one that you want. So let's say you're running a composition like, Rangers that really wants you to have Sedge, but you're only given Cho'Gath or you're only given Gnars. Don't be mad about that.
This looks like set 9.
A lot of times people will hold on to these 4 cost units and see what stabilizes first into a 2-star, and then run whatever happens first. And maybe save.
I know it's like Rutero Forge, but if you showed me this footage,
a 1-star Sedge until you find more, and you can replace
a little bit of editing magic. It looks like set 9.
So
very
people
similar.
tend to tunnel too hard on what the perfect comp looks like, but in reality, you're only going to get a perfect comp probably 2 out of 8 games, 2 out of 10 games.
What? 2 out of 8? 2 out of 10? Nah, brother. No, not today. No. If you know what, if you do your due diligence, you scout properly at like the early game, and you're scouting consistently throughout the game, you are very likely to end up on the composition that you are sort of envisioning in your head. Assuming it's a meta line, like a meta standard line. like for example, if I'm like, oh, I want to play Callista Bastions, and the meta line is like Callista with like Taric and whatever, yada yada yada. It's very likely I'm going to find that basically cookie cutter board. As long as, you know, I'm not contesting yada yada.
Realistically
I said
speaking,
that a ton.
I almost
I'm like
never
a broken
get
record,
a perfect
but you
comp
get the
that I
idea.
want. It's always I have to mix and match and try my best to figure out a synergy that is best suited to what the pieces that I'm given. And that's something that you should also look to aspire to do. So let's say you're, as I said, you're given a Nar 2. Don't be upset about that. Be like, hell yeah, Nar 2 is a great unit. And I think, and since the front lines fit in relatively similar comps, you can always tend to play it. And on top of that,
good advice, yeah. Even nowadays, I actually did a Reimplosion VOD review yesterday where out of nowhere, she just hits this 2-cost Swain, or 2-star Swain, which is a 3-cost 2-star tank. Hell fucking yeah. She wasn't necessarily playing the shapeshifters, or that wasn't the original intent, but if you find such a ridiculously strong frontline, this was at 3-2 by the way, you're gonna make it and you're gonna fucking send it, and that way you can, as long as you can jam it in some way and it has some level of identity on your board, it will provide a lot of value, a lot of frontline that you may have been lacking beforehand, without having to dig for, you know, the optimal perfect unit during stage 3. Very true now.
Get a unit like Nar 2, all of a sudden different options open up because Nar is a wild shapeshifter. So maybe your composition is running Rangers and Nar, and all of a sudden you're given Swain. And then you can look to run maybe a shapeshifter variant of Rangers that you've never seen before.
I'm not in my head. I have no idea what you're talking
about. Where maybe you just want to go into something like Warwick, and all of a sudden your front line has Warwick, Nar, and then you realize, hell, I'm gonna throw a Volibear in there. So your front line becomes really flexible based on what you're given, because whatever synergy you kind of commit to are synergies that you can look to use to create whatever comp you can. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Scarra.
Oh, what am I thinking, Scarra? What am I thinking?
How did your shirt change color? But what you really should be thinking is...
Wait, did it change color? Oh my god, it fucking did. Wait, what? Wait, that's such a curveball. Holy fuck, dude, I love this guy, dude. This guy's sick.
Scarra, thank you so much for making this video.
Thank you, Scarra, for making this video.
Please let me know what other videos, topics you want to hear from me. This won't be the last pivoting video, but I do think in this video I wanted to highlight the importance of flexibility, because I think first and foremost that's the trait that you're going to want the most when playing these types of games.
True.
Anyways, thank you so much. Like, comment.
Dude, I heard the music coming on in the back, and I thought that was his phone ringing. I was like, he kept that in there?
Subscribe below. See you guys later.
Goodbye, Scarra. Damn, good ass video, Scarra. Well done, done. Very good stuff. Cool video. I like that a lot.